We're going to be continuing to work with the breath, which we always do, and the core and the hips. We've done most everything other than the posterior chain. So today we're working on kind of what we might prepare for with back bends. So with that, come to a seated position and actually sit on the floor. Just an easy cross-legged position. And just beginning with some easy spinal mobility. You can close your eyes and just kind of allow this to ripple through your spine. We'll start with the neck. So just taking your chin towards your throat, or chin towards your chest. So going into flexion. And then as if you're stacking each vertebrae, come up through neutral and just take it back as far as you can comfortably through extension. So the rest of your torso is keeping your Q. So collarbones are broad, they're wide across the front. The lower rib cage stays down and in, creating that mirror image of the circumference of your rib cage to match the pelvic bowl. So you're sitting on the sit bones or slightly forward of the sit bones to keep the pelvis in neutral. And just continue to nod your head yes. And as you start to nod forward and back, just notice if the range starts to increase in either direction. As you slowly introduce movement, especially into that extension, can you take it a little further back with ease? And we're going to allow this to trickle down. So now as you take your chin towards your chest, allow your upper back to come into that as well. So rounding your upper back, mid back. And then think of stacking each vertebrae on top as you come into neutral. And then as the head drops back, let it trickle down your spine. And then think of drawing the chin towards the throat as you move into flexion again. So not allowing it to go any further than the bottom of your thoracic spine, which is where your 12th rib, your bottom rib, meets your spine. And as you start to go forward and back, notice if you create a little bit more ease in movement. And noticing what part of this is challenging. Is it more challenging to move into flexion or more challenging to move into extension? And then the next time you come into a flexion, allow it to trickle down into your lumbar spine. So feel it go down. And then once you feel the lumbar spine go into flexion, then you can allow the posterior tilt of your pelvis. So shifting to the back of your sit bones. And then to come up, start to shift to the front of your sit bones and allow that extension to trickle up your spine. So it's like you're building your spine from the bottom up and then you're taking it further back. So it starts from the sit bones first, tilting the sit bones to back. Feel that flexion trickle up your spine. Starts with the sit bones shifting forward, allowing it to trickle up your spine as you build it into neutral and then take it back into extension. So play with this a little bit. There's always going to be that tendency, especially with flexion, to start with the head first. See if you can start with moving the pelvis first. So thinking the movement starting from your sit bones, both as you move into flexion and extension. So we're kind of reversing our initial order, which we did kind of opposite in each direction. Now we're starting both at the base of your spine. And the next time you build it up, build it just into that neutral spine. So stacking the sit bones in neutral and allowing the vertebrae to stack one on top of the other. And then once your spine is tucked, check your cue. So chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. So we're not drawing the shoulder blades down the back. We're creating that smile across the front of the collarbones. So if you were to smile and the bottom of your smile was where your sternum is and you were lifting the edges of your lips slightly out, do the same with your collarbones. So you're not crunching your shoulders up towards your ears, but you're allowing them to relax in neutral. And just notice what it feels like to be in neutral rather than shoulder blades going down your back or allowing the shoulder blades to roll up towards your ears. And notice how different this feels. Like to me, when I try to draw my shoulder blades down my back, just try that. Pull your shoulder blades as far down your back as you can. Notice how that feels. I mean, I feel a lot of tension. I even feel discomfort, kind of where the front of the head of my shoulder is in the socket, right underneath the front of the collarbone. And now see if you can find that neutral again. So broaden from the midline of the collarbones out towards the heads of the shoulders and just let them sit in neutral. Eyes closed. And shift into your diaphragmatic breathing. And resisting the urge to make the breath bigger, but instead keeping it light and subtle. And just noticing if you're able to find that expansion of the back and side of the ribs. In and out through the nose. So most of the time we focus our awareness on the inhale portion of the diaphragmatic breath because we've been trying to create a little bit more awareness of breathing deep into the lungs rather than filling up the entire lungs. They do fill up, by the way. But feeling that expansion, that 3D expansion, we're going to shift our awareness to our exhale. So I know I've been talking about breathing in and out through your nose. We're still having kind of the same effect. The problem with exhaling through the mouth is it's really forceful and it's really fast. So that's why we try to breathe in and out through our nose, because the nose acts as a valve. We're going to use a mouth breath to exhale. You'll continue to breathe in through your nose. When you exhale, you're just going to relax your lips. And as if you were shushing someone in the movie, so really quietly, really softly, and really lightly, when you exhale, just kind of create that kind of shush sound. Long, soft, and quiet. So quiet that you don't want to disturb anyone else in the theater. And just notice how long you can stretch out your exhale, so making it longer without forcing the breath out. So it's almost like a slow release. And just don't even pay attention to your inhale. Just allow your inhale to be an afterthought. Just focus on each exhalation using that very quiet, very light, very slow shush sound. So that creates the same, since it creates the same purpose of your nose, it creates a valve which slows down the release of the breath. And we're working on extending our exhalation without force. So this also allows the natural muscle activation to occur. So you might feel a little bit of an engagement of your core area when you shh, opposed to just the regular exhalation. That's kind of what it does. But as you continue with this breath and you're ignoring your inhalations, hopefully, at this point in time, notice what has happened to your inhalation. Continue to concentrate on your exhale, but just notice how your inhalation may have changed. And I know it's hard every time you bring awareness to it, you automatically change it. So we're going to work with this breath throughout the practice as we work with backbends. So slowly open your eyes and we're going to come down to our backs. Going to do a little opening of the chest first, just because it feels good. So use your blocks in a T. So the upper block is on the long edge. Both of them are on the long edge. One of them is narrow, the other one is wide. You're going to sit in front of the block, bending your knees. Position the block that is long ways. It's going to support your spine and go between your shoulder blades. So position it in a place where it's at the bottom of the shoulder blades, not the bottom of the rib cage. And then take the other block. You can keep it at the same and take it slightly higher if that's too much opening on your chest. So we do have the block slightly higher than normal. Oftentimes we do it at the rib cage level. Rest the arms down beside your body. And start with your palms down. Now take a few breaths with our knees together and our feet wide, just to kind of allow things to soften. So find your cues, chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad, wide. Your ribs are automatically in a position where they are tending towards that flare, but that's why we position the block a little further up, is so that we can draw some awareness of taking the rib cage down. And then continue with that same breath. So concentrating on your exhalation as you use that shh sound to let the breath seep out slowly, quietly as you possibly can, and as for as long as you comfortably can. So you want this to be a comfortable extension, not one that you're forcing past the point of comfort. And just notice what happens when you focus just on the exhale. Notice the effect that it has on your chest. Notice the effect that it has on your belly. Notice the effect that it has on the diaphragm. Notice the effect that it has on your brain, your mind. And then allow your palms to turn up and take your arms out so they're T to the body. And if you're feeling comfortable, you can extend your legs long and just allow your feet to roll open. And if this puts too much pressure on anything, you can go back to whatever will make this comfortable, that those two positions we were in with the arms or legs. And again, notice the effects of using this long, extended, valved exhale. So the exhalation from a point of nervous system is connected to the parasympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest phase. So this is where we should feel calm and relaxed. Backbends, on the other hand, tend to be more stimulating to the nervous system. So you can use this long exhalation as a way of monitoring your heart rate as we move through different backbends. I often find that when I'm in a backbend, my heart rate increases. As you open your chest, there's a tendency to bring in more oxygen. And the other thing that happens when you start to focus on just the exhale, you may notice that your inhalation also becomes shorter, less forced, less big. Slowly bend your knees. Roll to either side to come off of the blocks, and then remove the blocks. We're going to come down just onto our backs for just a few cycles of breath to notice the effects it's had. You may notice as you come now into a more neutral position what happens to your heart rate. If you actually want to bring your left hand and place it on your heart and your other hand on your belly. Taking the time, we were just in a position where we put our ribs into somewhat of a flare. Can you refine that lower ribs down and in? And then take your blocks, bend your knees again, press your feet into the floor, lift your hips, and place the first block under your pelvis. So not in your lower back, but supporting your pelvis. And instead of moving like we're going into a bridge, we're going to actually use this to create a little bit more of awareness of the front of your core. So chin stays tucked, neck long. Your lower ribs will not touch the floor, but as if they could. So you're going into a slightly posterior tilt. So tailbone is tucking towards your pubic bone, and your lower ribs are coming closer to your hips, which pushes your mid back towards the floor. And then find your breath again. So that soft, gentle shh on the exhale, sustaining it for as long as you comfortably can. And then notice what happens to your inhale. But in this position, as you shush with your exhale, notice what happens to the front of your core. So that transverse abdominis, that corset muscle that connects the ribs and the hips and draws them in and towards each other. Notice the effect of that shush. You almost are more easily able to feel that slight contraction, that action of the core as you exhale. So there is a slight engagement of the transverse abdominis as you exhale. And then keeping this awareness, straighten your right leg to the ground. And you will feel a bit now of the hip point moving into anterior. You can allow the outer edge of your right foot to press down or to open up, and then straighten the other leg. So we're not trying to hold anything in the lower leg until we need to. So if you feel discomfort in your lower back, try just taking your heels a little bit and bending your knees a little bit. But if you can keep your knees extend without creating tension in your lower back, Move back into that shush on your exhale. And feel that awareness of the corset supporting the front of your spine, supporting the back of your spine. Bend one knee, bend the other. Press your feet down and lift your hips to remove the block. Separate your feet mat distance apart and just use a little bit of windshield wipering of the knees side to side to kind of move from a space of stillness into slight movement. And we're going to continue to work with variations of bridge pose. So roll to either side, press yourself up. Take your blocks, both of your blocks, and stack one on top of the other down at the bottom of your mat. And then we're going to come back onto our backs. Your kind of position your hips in the middle of your mat. So when you straighten this left, whatever leg the block side is on, that your knee can straighten and your foot will be supported by your block. Keep your hips there and roll down onto your back. Take your left or whatever side the blocks are on, take your foot and place the outer edge of your foot on that block. Your other heel is in line with your sit bone. Hands are down beside your body and keeping your hands pressing down into the floor, your foot that's on the floor pressing down into the floor. Keep your hips on the ground and just start to actively push the outer edge of your foot into the block. You'll probably feel more of the action in your heel, like the outer heel. See if you can bring some to your outer pinky. And notice what happens as you start to add tension in your body. What happens to your breath? So see if you can go back into that parasympathetic breath. Notice the effect that has on your neck, your jaw, your throat. If you feel that you can maintain this and lift your hips off the floor, press through the outer edge of the foot on the block. Continue to press down through your hands and your feet on the floor and lift your left hip off the ground. Keep your cue. So chin tucked, neck long, collarbones wide. Lower ribs down and in. So we have that core awareness. Keep pressing the outer edge of the foot down. If this feels good, bring your arms up, palms facing towards each other, fingertips reaching towards the sky. Release your hips to the floor. Release your hands to the floor. Take your feet to the outer edges of your mat and windshield wiper your knees side to side. So we're going to do the same side one more time. We're going to go through those steps, those 3 steps again. So progressing. I'm going to offer a 4th progression. So we're going to go through them a little bit faster than we did the last time. If you felt discomfort, or if you do not feel that you can take it to the final progression, or any of the progressions for that matter, just stay at the level where you find comfort and where you can maintain a comfortable breath without holding your breath. So bring your feet back to sit bone distance apart. Keep your foot on the floor that you just had on the floor. Take the other foot and bring it to the block. Knee is straight. Start to press down through the outer edge of your foot, hands to the floor, press down, foot on the floor, presses down, press down into the outer edge of the foot, feel where it triggers in your hips. Use that same awareness then to lift your hips off the floor. So press down through the foot on the block to get that activity to move into the hip, then bring the arms up. Bring the arms back down or stay there. The next progression is to lift the right foot off the ground. And then when you're ready, release the right foot back down to the ground. Release the hips to the ground. And release the foot back, feet mat distance apart, and windshield wiper side to side. So I'm going to take you through these steps on the other side. I'm going to watch you to make sure that you're doing it right on this side. So roll up and move the blocks to the other side. And what I think might actually be more helpful, instead of them being longwise, is to take them, instead of like this on your mat, take it this way. It might be a little bit easier to get the full edge of your foot on it. And when you're ready, roll down. You're going to keep the opposite foot on the floor, stretch the other leg long, and stack it on the outer edge of your block. Hands are down beside your hips. Find your cue, so chin tucked, neck long, collarbones wide, lower ribs down and in, hips in neutral. Begin by pressing the outer edge of your foot into the block and find that awareness first. Bend your other knee, Barbara. There you go. The other leg is straight and the foot is turned out. So the whole outer edge of the foot is on the block. Pressing the outer edge, you should feel it in your hip, your outer hip. So we're turning on glute medius. Press down and now lift the hips, trying to maintain that awareness of your breath and your cues. And then to increase the intensity even more, you can take your hands off. So you're no longer using your hands to press down for stability. You're using your foot and the outer edge of your foot. Can you maintain all your cues without creating tension in your neck, jaw, and throat? Good. Release your hands, release your hips. Take your feet wide and windshield wiper knees side to side. So second round, we're going to go through these a little bit faster. And we're going to opt for that last progression. So outer edge of your foot down, opposite foot is on the floor in line with your sit bones. Hands start down by your side, start to press down through your foot on the floor, your foot on your hands, then outer edge of the foot on the block. Feel that go all the way up into your hips. So you feel that outer hip engage, then lift your hips. Take a couple of breaths here, making sure you're still using that shh on your exhale, then bring the arms up, hands facing in towards each other, or maintain where you are. And then bring your hands down and opt to bend, take the foot that's on the floor off the floor. So all the work now is pressing down into that block on foot on the block. Take your knee towards your chest if you, yes, Lisa, nice, awesome. And when you are done, you are done. You can first lower your foot to the floor, then lower the hips to the floor, and then step your feet wide and windshield wiper side to side. Roll over to either side and come up. probably want to do this with your blocks on a surface that's more slippery. So if you have carpet, you're going to have an easier time sliding on your mat than you will on the carpet. But if you have hard floor, you'll be easier off. And if you don't have a slippery surface, it's more creating the sensation. Just notice what it feels like to do this. So turning the blocks in. And if you can't do this, just acting like you can will give the muscles the same sensation. So as you turn your blocks out, notice where you feel it in your back. And I'm not so worried about the in. I want you to feel more of the out. And again, if they don't move, that's fine. Actually, if they don't move, it's even better. So bring them back to the mat. Press down as if you were going to turn them out. Notice where you feel it. So these are your lats. And that's the action of what's going to cause it to turn out. Watch me for a second. I think the best way to show you is spacing you. So we're coming into kind of a variation of puppy pose. So your knees are wide. You're going to stretch. You're going to push the blocks out wide. So you're kind of coming into a T position and hopefully someplace where you can rest your head on the floor. You'll press down through your block and you'll create that sensation of twisting the blocks out without allowing them to twist. So knees wide. You can send your hips back as you take your arms out wide and in a position where you can rest your forehead on the floor. Press down into the blocks with the knuckles of all 10 fingers. And grip the outside of the block with your thumb and your pinky finger. And then as if you were twisting your thumb open towards your pinky. And notice what you feel. You might feel it in your shoulder, but notice where else from your shoulder it goes. Keep this position, but come up onto your fingertips. So now all 10 fingers are on the blocks and your hands are up like spiders, like your fingers are spider legs. Press down through the fingers, and now a little bit more awareness in your thumb and your pinky finger. Twist your thumb towards your pinky finger without moving the block. And notice that feeling go all the way down your back. Keep your forehead on the floor. Take one hand under your shoulder at a time and come up. So that feeling that you feel, did you feel that? Could you feel that action kind of going all the way down your back? That's the muscles, not only the lats, but it also engages the muscles down the spine. That's what's going to create stability in the back of your spine as we back bend. So come onto your belly. Bring your feet together and point your toes back. Stack your hands one on top of the other and just rest your forehead on your hands. Find your cues, so chin tucked, neck long. Broaden across your collarbones. If this doesn't make sense in this position, think of taking the top of your sternum or your breastbone, and as if you're lifting it away from the floor and pushing it towards the space between your shoulder blades, you'll feel the space between your shoulder blades broaden, but you still have a broadening across the front as well. Lower ribs down and in, pelvis in neutral. So reach your tailbone between your heels, feeling the hip points move up towards the ribs. And then interlace your fingers, taking the outer edge of the pinky edge of your hand only resting on the floor. Thumbs touch and rest your forehead on in the hole that you've created. The thumb is not on the floor, just the pinky edge. Press down through the pinky edge of your fingers. Feel your inner elbows push. Check your cues. And then can you create that same sensation that you just felt when you were twisting the blocks out? So if you push down through the pinky edge of your hand and reach through your inner elbows almost out, can you create that same sensation in the muscles along your back? Tuck your toes under. Push your heels towards the wall below you to lift the knees off the floor. Front of the thighs firm. Reach the tailbone towards your heels. Continue if you've lost it. I haven't reminded you in a while. Find that shh breath again. So can you maintain the awareness of staying active in the legs and in the arms and in those muscles along the back while still maintaining that more parasympathetic breath? And as you use the shush breath, can you feel your lower belly slightly peel away from the floor? Let that go. Separate your feet, stack your hands, relax your shoulders, and just swivel your hips side to side. Whichever finger you had interlaced on the bottom, switch it this time. Make your thumbs touch. Rest your forehead in your hands. Bring your feet back together. Tuck your toes under, reach through your heels, lift your thighs. Tailbone reaches towards your heels. Press down through the pinky edges of your fingers. Inner elbows, broaden your collarbones, ribs in. Shush breath. Inhale, you'll feel the rib cage expand. As you exhale, lift your head off your hands. Keep your elbows where they are and just take your wrist out about shoulder width apart. So not elbow width apart, but shoulder width apart. Turn your thumbs down towards your chest. So thumbs as if they're pointing straight towards your chest. Press through the pinky edges of both hands. Broaden across the collarbones. Twist in as you press through your inner elbow. See if you can find those muscles again in your back. Check your cues. Check your breath. As you shush, feel what's happening on your front side. Let it go, stack your hands, swivel your hips. Lift up into Sphinx pose, so elbows under your shoulders. If this is too much of an extension in your lower back, you can take your elbows slightly forward of your shoulders, but if you can rest comfortably with your elbows under your shoulders, great. Palms spread, press down through the palms. Slight twisting out of the hands. Chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. So lifting your sternum as if you're pushing it towards your spine. Lower ribs in. Find your shush breath. As you exhale, imagine you're taking your lower belly off the floor and actually allow that to happen. So kind of creating a little bit of flexion in the front of your spine as you shush. You'll feel your tailbone reach towards your heels. Now, what happens if you allow that to go further down? So maybe the hips lift as you exhale. And as you inhale, kind of just allow your inhale to take you back into that natural extension. As you exhale and lift your pelvis. So the pubic bone comes up. Let it go down. And then if you can, feel if you can lift all the way thighs up too. You might have to take a few breaths to get down back into that Sphinx pose, but move the flexion on the exhale. I'm going to watch. So the chest stays where it is. The only thing that's moving is your pelvis coming back down to the floor and lifting off the floor. So the upper from the ribs up doesn't move. The exhale lifts the pelvis, maybe all the thighs off the floor. Let it go. Stack your hands and swivel your hips side to side. So I think I probably need to show you this one so we can do it one more time. So you can just kind of prop up and watch me. I'm not going to talk because it's way easy to do this without the talking. So upper body set. See it? Try it. You don't have to lift. I mean, it might just be the pelvis that lifts off the floor. It might just be the belly that lifts off the floor. So can you use that to help to stabilize the front of the core to lift hips away from the floor? Whenever you're ready. Looks good. It's harder than it is harder than it looks like it should be or sounds like it should be. When you're done, release back into the forehead being stacked on your hands and swivel. Cool. All right. Come up onto your knees and take your strap. You're going to take your hands wide on your strap and then bring your arms above your head. Once they're up here, we're not thinking about pulling our shoulders down our back. We're thinking of keeping the shoulder blades in neutral, so it should be comfortable. Find your cues, chin tucked, neck long, collarbones broad. Notice what that does to your shoulders. Lower ribs in, pelvis in neutral. So notice in this position, are you tilting your pelvis forward or back? So keeping that. You exhale, you're going to continue to pull the belts apart as you take the belt behind your back and take your elbows towards your side body. And you're going to move with your own breath. So inhaling to come back and reset. Make sure you're using that to take it down. Notice if there's a point where you lose your cues, especially the lower ribs down and in. You'll match the inhale, your natural inhale, to the straightening of your arms. And however long you can make that try to keep your movement of the elbows down that slow. And again, you should feel those same muscles that we've kind of been targeting along the spine. All of the movement should be happening at the shoulder blade, as well as the elbows and the shoulder joint. Go ahead and let that go. Take your blocks on either side of your mat. Come up to a high kneeling position and step your right leg forward. So we have been taught that a psoas stretch is this. The pelvis is what matters. As soon as we take our pelvis forward, we automatically go into an anterior tilt. The best position for actually lengthening the psoas is 90-90. So hip above knee, because you can keep your pelvis in neutral. So hip above the knee. Bring your left hand to your outer hip. That's the one. Which knee is forward? Your right knee is forward, right? Left hand to the hip. Bring your hand to the outer hip. Take your back of your right hand and place it inside your knee. So your right foot is adducting. When you are in a gait, when you're walking, the tendency of your right leg is to, what it should do is go into adduction. So we want to train adduction in our front leg. So back of the hand and knee press together. You start to feel that awareness of your inner thigh muscle engage. Pull it as if you were sucking the leg bone into the groin. And then press awareness of the ball mount of your big toe and inner heel and that front leg. If this outer hip pops out a little bit, don't worry about it so much. I want the adduction to happen. Hand on your left hip. Imagine that you could use the outer muscles to suck your hip away from your hand. So the back hip is in slight abduction. So your supporting leg is in abduction. So as if you could suck the hip out of your hand. This hip may lift a little bit, that's okay. Press knee and hand together, knee pointing over your second and third toe, press down through the ball mount of your big toe and drag your inner heel back. Imagine that you had a pocket on the front of your front hip, push the pocket forward. So outer hip, pockets pushing forward, still have that awareness. Knee and hand, big toe, heel. Grace, shift back more. Your hip should be directly over the knee. Good. Does that feel different? Push the pocket forward without pushing the hip forward or without taking the hip forward of the knee. To keep that, and just for awareness, notice what happens if you take it into that lunge. Like I feel immediately I lose awareness of my groin. I'm no longer stretching my psoas because you went into an anterior tilt. The only way to target the psoas and actually lengthen it is to keep the pelvis in neutral. So back it back out and then switch. So left foot forward. Check to make sure your hip is directly over your knee. Back of the left hand inside the left knee. Find that awareness first. So knee and hand pressed together. Big toe, inner heel, groin, leg bone pushes into the groin. And when you push that leg bone back, you're already going to start to feel that pocket move forward. Right hand on the outer hip, as if you could suck the hip out of your hand. You're engaging the abductors. So the same muscle we engaged with our foot stacked on the blocks when we were doing bridge pose, foot turned out. And notice how active this is. Notice what you feel on the front of your hip when your hip is stacked over your knee. And then just for comparison's sake, notice how you lose that as you shift forward. Then shift back up, reactivate it. So the pocket pushes forward, outer hip sucks out of your hand. Keep pressing knee and hand together. Big toe, suck the leg bone into the groin. Should feel a lot of work going on in your booty or the supporting leg. Good. Sit back and just shift side to side. So let that tension go. I'm going to show you two progressions that we're going to do with this. So you can kind of let that go for a moment. And do the same thing. So I'm going to do my good side so that I can show you. So we're going to be in a 90-90 position. We're going to do it with the back toe tucked this time. We'll find the same things. The first progression is to remove the hand out of the knee. Find that sucking of the hip in. We'll come onto the toes. And then notice that when I do this, my shoulders should be staying stacked. I'm not doing this to stabilize. I'm using my hip to be able to only lift my toe. Then the next progression will be this foot stays on the ground. We'll come back to hand to knee, and we'll come back to hand to hip, and we'll hover. Fingers crossed. Notice I'm just lifting the knee without shifting forward to lift my knee. It's hard. So come up into that tall kneeling position. We'll start right leg first. So right foot forward. 90-90 position. Tuck your back toes under. Tuck your back toes under. Release the back toes under. There you go. A little bit more awareness of pressing through the outer edge of your back foot. So the pinky edge of your back foot. It's going to help to actually turn your glute med on a little bit. Bring your right hand on the inside of your right knee and press down or press them together, tracking knee over big toe or second and third toe. Find awareness of big toe mount, inner heel drag, suck the leg bone into the hip socket. Take your left hand to your outer hip, and as if you were sucking it out of your hip, so suck it in. So once you find the pelvis stable, you can remove your hand from inside of your knee and come up onto your right toes. Try to keep your shoulders directly above your hips. Awareness of that outer hip sucking in, come up onto your toes and see how long you can take your toes off the ground. And it won't be long, you saw me, without moving your hips side to side or without moving your shoulders forward and back. So it takes a lot of glute med stability on the outer hip in order to stabilize. So it's like you're sucking your hand out of your hip. sucking your hip out of your hand on your stable leg, the knee that's on the ground. Good. If you do put something under your knee, make sure you still have stability because it will get, that will destabilize you more. When you're done, come back to center, and now let's try to stabilize and lift the back leg. So this is a low lunge. So bring your right hand to the inside of your right knee. Press them together. Right hand to the inside of your right knee. Press them together. Bring the leg bone into the hip socket. Big toe mount, inner heel. Start to reach to the pinky toe of your back foot. Hand to the outer left hip. Suck the hand out of the hip. So bring it towards midline. Try to hover the back knee off the floor for a second without shifting the shoulders. Yep, it's hard. Grace, keep your shoulders over your hips. So go straight up. Lisa, try to keep your shoulders over your hips. It's so freaking hard. And maybe you can only do it once or twice. Don't use your hands, Grace. Use the stability of your hips. It's so hard. Let's take a break. So sit back. You might even do child's pose because that's going to feel better. That was nice, Lisa. That one was good. Let your hips go. And let's do the other side. Because I just looked at my watch and we have like 3 minutes left. So come forward and step your left leg forward. 90-90 position. Back of the left hand inside of your inner left knee. Back toes tucked under. Start to press back of the hand and knee together. So you find those muscles on your inner thighs engage. Knee stays pointing straight between your second and third toe. And as if you could suck the leg bone into the hip socket. Right hand to the outer hip, as if you could suck the hip out of the hand. So bringing it towards midline. And then imagine pushing back through the ball mounts of your big toe or little toe and inner heel. Reach the heel back to hover the knee off, sucking the hip in. You're going to find one hip is easier than the other. Oh, we forgot the toe thing. Yeah, come onto your left toes and do the toe thing first. Can you do that without the side to side? Can you stabilize with your outer hip? And if you lose this, this is where you work. So can you lift that foot off the ground, Lisa? Like lift the toe off the ground? Maybe your camera just froze. You can take your hand out if you want. But notice your tendency to shift your torso. And everybody's got a weaker side. Everybody's got a side that won't organize correctly. And then if you can do that without losing balance, you can try the low lunge. If you can't, this is your stopping point. This is what you work with. So the focus is the leg that the knee is on the ground. That's where you build the stability. This is gait work. This is improving your gait. Grace, I think you can move on to step 2. You look pretty solid. So see if you can do a low lunge. Nice. Cool. So when you're done, again, come into any position. Child's pose, I think, would feel pretty good with this one. And then the final thing we're going to do, just because that's what we've kind of been working for, is a camel pose or a variation of camel pose. So come up onto high knees and just watch. You can actually sit back on your heels and watch. I'm going to show you the 3 progressions and you're going to play with them. So progression number 1 is blocks by your ankles, toes tucked under. You're going to find the action that we just did in the hips. So hips hug in and push forward. We're going to do this whole elbow thing that we've been doing to set the muscles of the back down your spine. Watch first, Barbara. Watch first, because this is going to get tricky. So watch. So elbows come down without lifting the ribs. You can use the shh. And then keep that openness. Bring your hands to your back. Continue to push the hips forward. Tailbone reaches down, ribs stay in. You can bring your hands to your blocks. You can bring your hands to your knees, heels. You can start to then just feel your head back. So now come high on your knees, have your blocks close by. You don't even have to take your hands to the blocks. You just keep them on your back. That's regression number 1. So come up onto your knees. Find that awareness of your outer hips hugging in and your pockets pushing forward. And take your arms over, palms facing forward, as if you're pulling the belt apart and elbows come down. Use the shh without flaring your ribs. Then keeping that awareness, just take your hands and place them on the tops of your hips. So you've engaged the muscles along the back. You have that core support on the back. Start to lean back. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you take your hands down to the blocks. Hips continue to push forward. So squeeze Lisa, your blocks are too far back, way too far back. Come out of it and bring your blocks about mid-shin, right above your ankles. Even further forward, up on the highest level. Grace, yours looks great. So squeeze your blocks. Imagine that your hips are not moving back. It's more the hips move forward. So don't lean back. Keep your hips pushing forward as if you're keeping your hips right above your knees. Lisa, watch me for a second. Come down and watch me for a second. And if you can't take your hands to the block, more of what we're looking for is that outer hip stability. Watch what happens as I go back. My hips don't move, so I'm not doing this. I'm keeping my hips forward. And now I'm asking for actual extension of the spine. And you can just do this. So when you bring your elbows down, that's what activates the muscles that help you extend your spine and keep pushing the hips forward. Good. When you come out of this, lead with your chest first, your head comes up last. Awesome. So come into child's pose just to kind of give, and maybe down dog is a little bit more active. Maybe just a couple of breaths in down dog and then child's pose. So I did go over a little bit. I apologize. So much of back bending is stabilizing the hips, the pelvis, especially those abductors, adductors, the glutes, but also having the action of those muscles along your spine, which are also deep intrinsic core muscles. So you can do whatever movement you need or that you feel that you need at this point. And then when you're done, you're done. So you can come up and out of it at your own pace.